Super Rugby AU semi-final. Brumbies and the Force. Pretty chuffed the Force have made the semis, to be honest. And I will be surprised if many neutrals are back in the Brumbies, to be honest. Nothing against the Brumbies. I love the Brumbies. They were worthy winners last year. But man, the Force are a bit of a fairy tale story. So a lot of people is going to be back in the Force for this one. They are away from home, so they've got it all to do. But they proved last week when they beat the unbeaten Reds that they are certainly a side currently doing pretty bloody well. That being said, the Brumbies only lost 2 games. They're 6-2. They only lost to the Reds. So the Brumbies have proved that they are the second best team in Super Rugby AU thus far. The Force finished dead even with a 4-4 record. They did meet twice in the regular season, and like I said, the Brumbies only lost to the Reds. They didn't lose to the Force. The first game was round 1, 27-11 over there in Perth, and then a bit of a hiding in round 6, so 42-14. So maybe mentally you give the edge to the Brumbies. But that being said, they have just witnessed the Force do a job over the Reds, and the Reds are the only team they couldn't get the job done against. So maybe mentally there's a little bit of doubt. I like the idea that anybody can beat anybody. It's always good to see that kind of, doubt when you go into a game, and you're hoping that it's going to be a close one and it'll be a cracker. It is on Saturday. I think it's 7:45 local time. It's 9:45 over here in New Zealand. So it's definitely one to get up and watch, or stay up and watch if you're over here in New Zealand. Maybe get up in the morning if you're in Europe. Lineups. Slipper, Fuanga, and Alaalatoa is the front row for the Brumbies. And they will be looking to boss the game, but they will be slightly nervous about the way that the Force scrum performed in the second half last week against what's pretty much been an all-dominant Reds scrum. So the Force, despite the fact that their stats over the course of the season are the worst for scrums, the Brumbies aren't going to have this all their own way, you would think. Slipper gets a start at loose head, so Sio is down to the bench. Swain and Neville is a familiar locking duo for the Brumbies, and both those guys have been very good this season, both in the air and both tackling in terms of their work rate. It's been really impressive. Valtini shifts back to 6 because Samu is back in the 8 jersey, and Rory Scott only made his debut a couple of weeks ago. He's at number 7. Nick White is also back from the bench last week. Was it last week or the week before? Because they had the bye, didn't they? He is in the number 9 jersey. Lolasio is still there at 10, so familiar combo. Those guys have got good chemistry. They've been playing together for quite some time. Simone is also back after resting last game against... I can't remember. What was the round 10 games? My mind has gone blank. The Waratahs played the Rebels. Yeah, these guys were on the bye. Simone is back at 12 and Ikitau's at 13. So, Simone had a bit of a field day against the Force in their last game. So he's a guy that they'll have to try and keep quiet. Liam Wright, Muirhead, and Banks make out the back 3. And if you look at the stats... Banks is all over things in terms of just generating great kind of statistical prowess. Whether that translates to force on the field or not, force on the field, action on the field, success on the field, remains to be seen. The rest of the bench, Frost is there. Reimer, I think, is due for a debut. Pasitoa, Hansen, both the Lonigans, the hooker and the scrum half there as well. For the Force, it's pretty stable. Robertson, Katu'u, and Medrano gets a start. Now, he was good. Last week came on at half-time and really shored up the Force's scrum. So Holmes drops to the bench. Thrush and Tamani, really good, different style, lock and duo. Thrush seems to do more of the work in the air, especially disrupting opposition ball. And Tamani does a lot of ball carrying. Lee Warner is also back starting this week. Remember, he's sat on the bench the last couple of weeks in favour of Anstey. So Lee Warner adds maybe a bit of bulk and another line-out option at 6. Kateka has been a tackling machine in Thunder 7 and 8. Kobeli and Miotti are speaking about chemistry. Now, these guys haven't played that many times together for the Force because Miotti's only been getting games like the last month or so. But they've played together, obviously, with Argentina or with the Jaguares, so there should be some extra chemistry there, and I think we are seeing that on the field. That's the 19 combo. Godwin and Kahui, 12 and 13. Remember, Tavita Kurandrani is suspended. That's a big loss for the Force. I still don't think TK has hit his full straps for the Force, but he's been effective and his work rate is massive. So they will miss that. But that being said, Kahui is an experienced replacement at 13. And Godwin's been great since he come back. His tackling rate has been phenomenal, and he's added a bit of the offensive game as well in the last couple of weeks. Oliver Fella is coming off a hat-trick last week, so he'll be doing well to get anywhere near his performance levels, but he'll be full with confidence. Pulu's on the right wing, and Strachan gets the nod at 15. Remember, they named Carney last week, but he pulled out injured, so couldn't quite come right. Reedy, Wagner, Holmes, like I mentioned, McCauley, Anstey, Taifu, Pryor, McGregor. That's the bench for the Force. Looking at the head-to-head stuff, if you're looking at tries, the Brumbies are first. They've scored a lot of tries, 37. And the Force are fourth with a mere 15. But it is hard when I read these stats because, and I remember saying it when the season was not even underway yet, that the Force had brought in a lot of players, so it was going to take them time to gel. And I think maybe towards the tail end of the season, we've seen some of that starting to come together. They're getting the combinations right. They know pretty much what their best team is at the moment. And the guys are starting to get some match day understanding with each other. So although they are fourth, I think they are maybe better value than what that shows. Clean breaks is second against fifth, so 70 to 44. So again, the Brumbies pretty dominant statistically. Carries, interestingly, the Force are the top side for carries, but they like one of the lowest for clean breaks, the lowest for clean breaks. So they've been smashing into opposition brick walls, but I do think in the last few rounds we have seen them carrying more effectively than we have in the opening for a few rounds. Lineouts, it's the top side in the Brumbies against fourth. Offloads, they're pretty much almost the same, the bottom two sides actually, in terms of offloading the ball. And their scrums, as I mentioned, the Force one statistically is the worst. But if you watched the game last week, they weren't bad at all. And the Brumbies are the second best behind the Reds. Individuals, like I mentioned, tries, Oliver Fella is actually the Force's top try scorer, getting 3 in that one game plus one other. Faenga is the top man for the Brumbies alongside Banks, so it shows that they can score with the forwards and the backs. If you're looking for clean breaks, it's Banks. Carries, it's Banks. Run meters, it's Banks. Banks is a man they need to shut down. Do the Force. For the Force, their carry guy is usually TK, Tavita Kurandrani, but also Fergus Lee Warner for trucking it up. Lineouts, Neville and Swain, not surprisingly, Thrush and McCauley for the Force. Interestingly, Kateka is one of the top tackling guys in Super Rugby EU, but also is Caden Neville. So, yeah, there's certainly some good work rate in both sides. The goal kicking, though, 77% for the Force, 86% for the Brumbies, but the Brumbies have kept their goal kicking pretty stable. They've had a few guys kicked. Lolasio's kicked. Ryan Lonergan's kicked. I think Nick White's taken a couple. But the Force have had maybe a bit more shifting around and who takes. Like Lolosio would have taken the lion's share for the Brumbies. The Force have maybe shifted around it a bit more. Bookie's prediction, 15 points for the Brumbies. Rugby Forecast algorithm goes a step further and says Brumbies by 20. So the Force are very much underdogs for this one. If you're the Reds, I'm not sure who you'd rather face. The Force again, given they just beat you, or do you think you've got the wood over the Brumbies? The Brumbies almost beat the Reds, so don't know. Should be a really interesting watch. I'm very much looking forward to this one. How do you think this one is going to go, guys? Are you picking the Force for that fairy tale final, or do you think the Brumbies have their number based on these last two? But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts, and I will talk to you guys soon. See you later.